You wake up slower than you used to, not just from age, but from something else, something thick in your joints, something buzzing behind your eyes. You press your hands against your knees and feel that low hum, not quite pain, but not quite peace either. And it doesn't go away. It trails you into the kitchen, where you reach for what you've always reached for. The same yellow bottle, same smooth pour into the pan, same trusted routine. You're doing everything right. Eating cleaner, skipping sugar, watching your salt. But still, there's this low-grade heat in your body. The stiffness, the swelling, the sense that your body is quietly arguing with itself. It doesn't scream, it simmers. And the worst part is, it's familiar, common. You've told yourself it's normal, just what happens after 60, after 70. But deep down you've wondered, what if it's not just time taking its toll? What if something you believe is safe isn't? You wouldn't blame yourself, not after decades of being told one thing by the label, another by the news, and a third by your own instincts. Still, there's a voice that whispers when you move, when you cook, when you lie in bed with that ache in your hips. Something's off, something small, something easy to overlook. But it's been building, not overnight but over years, like a slow leak in your roof that warps the floorboards one creak at a time. This is the moment to listen, not with fear, but with quiet attention. Because it's not just what you're eating that matters, it's what you're cooking it in, what you're soaking your health in every single day. And if your body is waving a flag, even a quiet one, then maybe it's time to ask what you've been pouring into the pan. And that bottle, it's been there for so long it barely registers anymore. A background prop in your life, dependable as your morning mug. You picked it for its promise, light, cholesterol-free, heart-healthy. They said it was better than butter, safer than lard, a modern solution for a modern body. You remember the shift, the ads, the experts, the way canola oil seemed to slide right into every recipe like it belonged there all along. It wasn't questioned, it was promoted. Even doctors nodded when you said you used it. So you did, for years. And why wouldn't you? There was comfort in its clarity, in its lack of taste, in the way it browned a potato without complaint. But comfort, it turns out, can be misleading. Because something doesn't need to taste wrong to be wrong. And what they didn't tell you, what maybe they themselves didn't know yet, is that what's easy on the tongue isn't always easy on the body. Canola oil doesn't announce itself with bitterness or a smell that tells you to back away. It blends in. It's subtle, just like the inflammation it helps stoke. You might not have noticed at first the slow rise in blood pressure, the stubborn belly weight that clings even when you're careful, the cloudiness that creeps into your thinking. Maybe you blamed it on aging, on genetics, on something else, because no one ever pointed to the bottle. They pointed to sugar, to processed food, to red meat, but not to the oil that soaked your vegetables, glazed your chicken, floated in every light salad dressing you trusted. And so it kept its place, on the shelf, in the skillet, on your plate, each meal a quiet handshake with something your body wasn't built to handle in those amounts. But it never raised its voice, and that's how it stayed invisible. And that bottle, it's been there for so long it barely registers anymore, a background prop in your life, dependable as your morning mug. You picked it for its promise, light, cholesterol-free, heart-healthy. They said it was better than butter, safer than lard, a modern solution for a modern body. You remember the shift, the ads, the experts, the way canola oil seemed to slide right into every recipe like it belonged there all along. It wasn't questioned, it was promoted. Even doctors nodded when you said you used it. So you did, for years. And why wouldn't you? There was comfort in its clarity, in its lack of taste, in the way it browned a potato without complaint. But comfort, it turns out, can be misleading. Because something doesn't need to taste wrong to be wrong. And what they didn't tell you, what maybe they themselves didn't know yet, is that what's easy on the tongue isn't always easy on the body. Canola oil doesn't announce itself with bitterness or a smell that tells you to back away. It blends in. It's subtle, just like the inflammation it helps stoke. You might not have noticed at first the slow rise in blood pressure, the stubborn belly weight that clings even when you're careful, the cloudiness that creeps into your thinking. Maybe you blamed it on aging, on genetics, on something else. Because no one ever pointed to the bottle. They pointed to sugar, to processed food, to red meat, but not to the oil that soaked your vegetables, glazed your chicken, floated in every light salad dressing you trusted. And so it kept its place, on the shelf, in the skillet, on your plate. Each meal a quiet handshake with something your body wasn't built to handle in those amounts. But it never raised its voice, and that's how it stayed invisible, because not every signal comes wrapped in pain. Some are quieter still, coated in silence, hiding behind numbers on a chart or that vague sensation that something's just off. The inflammation you can't touch, can't see, can't quite describe. It's the one that stays, the one that builds behind the scenes, in the lining of your blood vessels, in the soft tissue of your brain, in the places your body protects most fiercely but can no longer fully shield. This is the kind that doesn't ask for attention with a limp or a wince. It just keeps smoldering. You wouldn't know it unless you were looking. Not with your eyes, but with a kind of awareness most of us were never taught to trust. That sense of sluggishness that drags through your day like wet clothes on your back. The fog that makes you forget names. The breath that shortens faster on hills you used to climb with ease. You write it off. We all do. Just tired. Didn't sleep well. Must be the weather. But deep inside, your immune system is working overtime, mistaking the leftovers of a meal for a threat, flaring up in defense of a danger it can't quite place. And in the background, there's the oil, silent, golden, clean on the surface, but processed in a way your body reads as chaos. Its molecules warped by heat and pressure, its nature changed into something that doesn't belong inside you. Each time it slides across a skillet or settles into a sauce, it brings a kind of static with it, fuel for the fire you don't feel until it's already spreading, until it's baked into the rhythm of your days, disguised as normal. But normal isn't the same as harmless, and just because something doesn't scream doesn't mean it isn't screaming through you in ways you haven't yet learned to hear. And maybe that's what unsettles most, the way it was introduced, dressed up as progress. You were told it came from a plant, something safe, even wholesome. But the truth behind canola's origin isn't from the fields you picture, but from laboratories, chemical processing tanks, and high-heat refinement rooms where nature gets bent to fit a price point. The canola plant itself is not ancient. It's a modified cousin of rapeseed, engineered in the 1970s to remove compounds once considered toxic to humans. That's not evolution. That's manufacturing. To make canola oil, seeds are crushed and stripped with solvents, often hexane, a chemical most people wouldn't recognize but wouldn't dare touch if they did. The crude oil is then bleached, deodorized, and refined under extreme heat to make it shelf-stable and neutral in flavor. What you get is something clean to the eye, easy to pour, and utterly removed from how your body understands food. The molecules are twisted in the process, leaving behind trace residues and unstable compounds your cells were never designed to metabolize. That's not cooking oil. That's a compromise hidden in a bottle. You were never meant to know this. It was marketed as light, pure, modern, and it worked. Canola became the go-to oil in homes, hospitals, even health-conscious kitchens. But just because something is common doesn't mean it's safe. And just because it doesn't taste like poison doesn't mean it isn't slowly creating the conditions for chronic illness to thrive. You feel betrayed, perhaps, or confused. But that confusion is the result of a system that made you trust the label more than your lived experience, more than your own body's subtle decline. So when you reach for the bottle again, it's no longer just a habit, it's a moment of awareness. Because now you know how it got there, and more importantly, what it might be doing after it goes in. Because once it's in, the body doesn't just let it sit, it breaks it down, it tries to use it. And that's where the real tension begins, deep inside your cells, where signals are sent like messengers running through a crowded street. Some carry instructions for healing, others carry the spark that ignites inflammation. They're both necessary, but only in balance. What canola oil does, what industrial seed oils often do, is tip the scale. sending too many of the wrong messengers out at once until your body begins to respond to everything like it's an attack. The language here is subtle, not medical, not complicated, just simple biology thrown out of rhythm. Canola oil is rich in omega-6 fatty acids, which aren't evil by themselves, but they need their counterpart, omega-3s, to keep the peace. Like two sides of a seesaw, they work together to help your body respond and recover, inflame, and then resolve. But when one side grows too heavy, it doesn't just lower the balance, it crashes it. And in most diets shaped by processed oils, that crash is constant. You don't see it happening, but you might feel it, like an edge to your energy, a shortness in your patience, a lingering discomfort after meals that used to sit fine. Over time, this imbalance embeds itself into your tissues, into your joints, into your bloodstream, and still, no one tells you it could be the oil. Not the extra pounds or the sugars or the snacks, but the fat you thought was safe. This isn't about fear, it's about understanding the quiet chemistry of your own body, the way it tries to make peace with what it's given, the way it can still heal, still shift, still reclaim balance, once the scale begins to tilt back toward calm, toward clarity, toward the oils your body still remembers how to use. And maybe that's why you notice it more than you used to, not because you're weaker, not because your body is giving up, but because your body is finally asking to be treated with the reverence it has earned. With every passing decade, your systems shift, digestion slows, recovery takes longer. The defenses that once shrugged off irritants now pause, falter, hold on to the damage a little longer each time. What once bounced back now lingers. The inflammation that a younger body could burn off overnight, your body holds on to it, stores it, wrestles with it day after day. That's not failure, that's adaptation. That's the quiet wisdom of a body doing its best with what it's been given. But when the input doesn't change, when inflammatory oils keep coming in, there's only so much it can compensate for. The liver works harder, the blood thickens slightly, the gut becomes more reactive, and you begin to feel it, not in ways that doctors can always measure, but in the ways only you can truly know. The way your skin reacts differently, the way food feels heavier, the way rest doesn't restore like it once did. And this is where awareness matters most, because seniors aren't fragile, they're sensitive in the way that experience creates. You've lived through diets, fads, health revolutions. You've seen advice change, flip, contradict itself. You know how to listen, and now your body is asking you to listen more closely to what stays swollen, what stays tight, what no longer feels neutral. The foods that once did no harm may now carry consequences you never expected. Not because you changed your habits, but because your body changed its needs. That's not defeat, that's evolution. And it's here in this chapter of life where even small shifts speak volumes. One oil swapped, one pattern softened, one inflammation soothed before it becomes a storm. And it's true. When you asked, they didn't raise a red flag. No alarm, no warning, maybe even a quiet nod. Canola's fine, they said. Better than butter. And you believed them because you trust them. Because for so long, your doctor's voice was the final word, the compass that helped you navigate every twist in your health. But even the most trusted maps can be drawn with old information. And sometimes the guidance you're given isn't wrong. It's just incomplete. Medical advice moves slowly. Not because doctors don't care, but because systems move cautiously. The studies that shape guidelines are funded, reviewed, approved by layers of regulation and inertia. By the time new evidence makes it into the exam room, you may already be years into habits that no longer serve you. And the voices you hear most loudly, the commercials, the packaging, the food industry experts, have often shaped the narrative long before science catches up. So no, your doctor didn't lie, but they may not have had the full story either. Most weren't trained in nutrition, let alone in the chemistry of fats or the nuances of omega ratios. They're trained to treat disease, not always to trace its quiet beginnings. And canola oil, with its neutral taste and low cost, never looked like a culprit. It was easy to defend, harder to question. But you should, Because your lived experience, the inflammation, the brain fog, the joint pain that eases when you change what's on your plate, holds truth, even when the charts don't reflect it yet. This doesn't mean turning away from your doctor. It means becoming your own second opinion. It means holding what you're told up against what you feel. And if something safe still leaves your body uneasy, maybe safety needs to be redefined, not by tradition but by truth. Because it's not just the bottle itself, it's what surrounds it. The kitchen routines built over decades, the pan that never cools between meals, the habit of heating oil until it spits, the leftover dripping saved in a jar by the stove. These are the rhythms passed down, learned without words, repeated because they worked. They made food taste like comfort, like home. But somewhere along the way, what worked began to wear thin. Not in the flavor, but in what followed. The heaviness after eating, the restless sleep, the stiffness that greets you the next morning like a visitor who never leaves. It happens slowly. You reuse the same oil to save money, to save time. You brown your meats in a flash of heat, watching the edges curl and crisp. You trust the dressings lining your fridge, the light margarine, the mayo that promises heart health on the label. But these aren't just ingredients, they're carriers of oxidized fats, of emulsifiers, of residues from processing that layer into your system meal after meal. And once inflammation sets in, the body remembers. Each exposure adds weight, not just to the waistline, but to the immune system's burden. The fire doesn't need more wood, just a spark again and again. And when you feel it, you don't always trace it back. You blame the main dish, the pasta, the bread, the dessert, rarely the oil it was cooked in. But the truth is, oil clings. It soaks into the edges of everything. It becomes part of the whole. And when that oil is unstable, processed, repeatedly heated, chemically refined, it doesn't just flavor your food, it alters your chemistry. These are not failures. They're patterns you inherited, trusted, repeated, but they can shift. Even small swaps, a new pan, a cooler flame, a better oil, can quiet what's been stirred for too long. Because it isn't just about pain. Inflammation doesn't always knock on the door of your joints. It seeps into places you never think to check. It doesn't wear a label. It wears many faces. Sometimes it looks like high blood pressure that no medication quite tames. Sometimes it's the rising blood sugar you can't explain. The cholesterol that inches higher no matter how clean you eat. The forgetfulness, the short fuse, the persistent fatigue that makes each day feel just a little heavier than the last. You don't connect these dots at first. Why would you? They show up on different days, in different ways, and no one told you they might share the same root. But this is what chronic inflammation does. It inserts itself into the blueprint of your health. It whispers through the lining of your arteries, making them stiffen and narrow. It clouds the brain, disrupting the signals that once fired with ease. It clogs communication between your cells, slows their repair, misguides the immune system until it forgets what's friend and what's threat. And the oil, the wrong oil, used daily, layered into every meal, doesn't just feed your hunger. It feeds that inflammation, it helps it grow. You've likely done everything right on paper. Less sugar, fewer carbs, more walks. You've cut back, held back, sacrificed. But if the fire still burns, it's time to consider that something deeper is smoldering, something less obvious, something that doesn't announce itself with flavor or texture, but with time. Inflammation isn't always urgent, but it is always present once it takes hold. And when it lingers, it rewrites your health from the inside out. This isn't about fear, it's about clarity. Because the more clearly you see it, the more power you have to ease it. Not all at once, but quietly, gently, with the smallest changes that speak loudest over time. And quietly behind all of this, there is your gut, often overlooked, rarely discussed, but it's where everything begins. Every bite you take passes through its winding path, every nutrient absorbed, every immune signal shaped. It is not just a digestive pipe, it's a control center, a home to trillions of bacteria, messengers, workers that help your brain stay sharp, your mood stay steady, your body stay regulated. But when inflammation takes root there, the effects ripple outward like cracks in a foundation. The food you once digested with ease now leaves you bloated. The hunger cues go haywire. Your energy dips unexpectedly. And somehow, everything starts to feel a little more unstable. What stirs this fire? Often, it's the oils that coat your meals, especially the ones your gut lining struggles to recognize. Refined oils, industrial oils, oils like canola that have been broken down and reassembled so many times, your body can no longer tell what they are. These oils pass through your gut with an invisible weight. They irritate the lining, confuse your microbes, disrupt the signals that regulate inflammation. And once the gut is agitated, it doesn't stay silent. It sends distress signals through your skin, through your mood, through the way you sleep, through the fog that settles behind your eyes. The gut doesn't need drama to speak, just repetition, just enough of the wrong thing, day after day, the same oil, the same bottle, the same slow burn, until your body stops responding like it used to, until the feedback loops break. But the gut can heal. It's resilient, given space. It responds to nourishment that's simpler, cleaner, closer to how food was meant to be. And when you stop feeding it conflict, when you stop pouring oil on the fire, you might be surprised by what calms down, not just in your belly, but everywhere else you didn't know was inflamed. And then comes the moment you hesitate, standing in the aisle, eyes scanning the rows of bottles, watching the price tags climb. Extra virgin, cold pressed, imported. It feels like a luxury you were never meant to afford. Canola was simple, cheap, familiar. Olive oil feels complicated, exclusive, something for chefs or health nuts or someone who doesn't live on a fixed income. You reach for what you know because it seems like the smarter choice. Stretch the dollar, feed the family, keep things easy. But what if ease has a cost you've already been paying? In co-pays, in pills, in energy lost? What if the oil that costs more at checkout saves you in the places that matter most? Your clarity, your sleep, your movement, your mood. Because food is not just fuel, it's a message, and your body is listening with every drop. Yes, olive oil can be more expensive at first, but you don't need gallons. You don't need the fanciest glass bottle from across the sea. You need a good, stable oil in a size you'll use before it turns. A smaller bottle, a darker bottle, one ingredient on the label. You drizzle instead of drown. You savor instead of saturate. You make it last because now you understand what it gives in return. And when cost is real, and it often is, know that the shift doesn't have to be immediate or complete. Maybe it's just for your salad at first, or for the pan you use most. One habit, one recipe, one switch. You're not overhauling your life, you're honoring it. Because the body you've carried this far deserves more than what's cheap. It deserves what's kind. And sometimes kindness looks like a bottle that speaks not to your wallet, but to your future. And once you make the switch, even gently, even halfway, something starts to shift, not just in your pantry, but in your body. The meals feel different, not just in taste, but in aftermath. The bloating that used to linger, softer now. The fog that clung to your mornings, lifting slowly. Your joints feel looser, not perfect, not cured, but no longer throbbing like they used to. You may not notice it on day one, but your body does, quietly, like a sigh you didn't realize you'd been holding, because the right oil doesn't just coat your food, it nourishes your cells. Olive oil, rich in polyphenols and natural antioxidants, carries messages of healing. It doesn't agitate the gut. It doesn't scramble the immune response. It supports it. It soothes it. And your body, so used to managing friction, starts remembering what calm feels like. Not absence of sensation, but presence of ease. Meals don't feel like battles anymore. Your energy stops crashing mid-afternoon. The small fires begin to go out one by one. You didn't need to change everything. You didn't need to give up flavor or tradition or joy. You just needed to offer your body something it recognized, something closer to real, something it could use without bracing against it. And in that switch, in that simple pouring of a different oil into the same familiar pan, you gave your body permission to stop fighting, to start repairing. It doesn't happen all at once. It's quiet, gradual, a new kind of normal that builds with each meal, each day, each inflammation that no longer finds fuel. You don't need perfection, you need relief. And sometimes it begins with a bottle that signals peace, not just in your kitchen, but deep in the places where healing begins. And now, it's simply what you reach for, not a statement, not a declaration, just a new default, quiet, automatic, unforced. The olive oil waits by the stove, not with fanfare, but with familiarity. And the canola, it's moved to the back, maybe still there, but no longer center stage. You didn't make a dramatic exit, you just let the better choice speak louder over time. And it has. There's no guilt in where you came from, no shame in what you used to do. You trusted what you knew, followed what was taught, believed what labels told you. You survived, you adapted, you did your best with what was in front of you. And now, with new clarity, you're doing your best again. That's not failure, that's growth. This isn't about eating perfectly or throwing out everything in your fridge. It's not about fear. It's about tuning in, noticing, trusting your body's response over the noise of trends and marketing. So maybe tonight you roast your vegetables in something that won't inflame you. Maybe this week you skip the bottled dressing and drizzle your own. Maybe the guilt you used to feel around food is replaced with a kind of quiet confidence, a steadiness, a calm you can taste. And when you slip because everyone does, you don't spiral, you don't punish yourself. You remember that what matters is the pattern, not the exception. You come back to the better oil, the calmer choice, the body that is still willing to forgive, still able to heal, still eager to feel safe in your care. It's not a diet, it's not a rule, it's a return to something simpler, something truer, a default that finally works with your body, not against it. And maybe one day, not far from now, you'll wake up and notice something missing. Not a possession, not a sound, but a feeling. The old tightness in your hands is quieter. The swelling in your knees doesn't arrive before the weather. Your energy returns in slow waves, not all at once, but enough to carry you through your morning without crashing by noon. Something is gone, and in its place, space, lightness, the absence of that background ache you'd grown used to calling normal. This is what it feels like when the fire begins to fade, not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily, consistently, meal after meal, day after day, 1,000 small choices adding up to something profound. Not because you did everything right, but because you did one thing consistently with care. You changed the oil, you answered your body's whisper, you poured something healing into the very place where harm used to hide. You didn't chase a miracle. You chose something gentle, and in doing so, you reminded your body what peace feels like. Because health at this stage of life isn't about perfect numbers or punishing routines. It's about clarity, about calm, about the ability to move, to rest, to think clearly and feel fully. It's about the return of ease, not the absence of all problems, but the presence of flow, a walk that feels lighter, a meal that doesn't weigh you down, a body that feels listened to. This is not about being young again. It's about being wise enough to let go of what no longer serves you and brave enough to welcome what does. You've earned this ease. You've earned this comfort. And it doesn't require a full kitchen makeover or a pantry overhaul. It begins, as it always has, with one habit, one bottle, one quiet change. You are not too late. You are right on time. Because healing doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for attention. And now you know where to place it. So tonight, when you reach for the oil, let it be something your body recognizes, something that doesn't feed the fire but helps put it out. One drop, one meal, one calm step toward the life you still deserve to feel fully.